Chris Wright is the Secretary of Energy. And Chris Wright says, well, I'm a reasonable man. And he seems like a very likable person. But in fact, Chris Wright is a radical. He is an absolute, outright radical, trying to destroy the clean energy future of the United States. So while he says he believes in all of the above, we know he's an oil man. He's a gas man. He really believes in oil above all, not all of the above. That's for sure. And Chris Wright, with his radical, anti-capitalist attack upon the clean energy future of the United States, is absolutely destroying our ability to be able to compete with China in the clean energy sector for the rest of eternity. He's just deciding to completely and totally eviscerate our future. And he does so at the behest of Donald Trump, who is tied to, of course, the oil and gas and coal industry and their profit-making opportunities. Now, again, Chris Wright, that's where he made his money, oil and gas. So it's kind of natural for him to be a radical. A radical oil and gas guy wants to destroy wind, destroy solar, destroy new battery storage technologies. These are the technologies that compete against oil, gas, and coal, and their profits. And by the way, they would substitute technologies which would not pollute, not cause asthmas, not warm the planet dangerously, that would cause the storms and the fires and the floods, which we have been seeing. And it would accomplish all that. But a radical like Chris Wright as Secretary of Energy, he'd rather destroy all of it in order to increase the profits of the oil and gas industry. That's what he's doing, creating this absolutely destructive policy that is going to ultimately have the next generation of young people today pay a huge price in the future. So let's just take a few of these tax credits, which they're destroying, which would create good-paying jobs, which would help to spur our economy. Let's just take a look at a few of them to just see what he is orchestrating in the House Ways and Means and House Energy and Commerce Committee. It would remove the tax credits that a local restaurant can use to lower its electricity bill by putting solar panels on the roof of the restaurant. Gone. Incentives that a local corner store could have used to buy electric delivery trucks and install charging stations. Gone. EV battery and offshore wind manufacturing factories that source steel from red states. Gone. And why is he doing it again? He's doing it to help the oil and gas industry from which he came. He's a radical. He sees the world in a rearview mirror. Let's just stay in the oil and gas era. Let's stay in the coal era. Let's not move to a new innovation economy. Let's not move to a clean energy economy. Let's just stay back in the past. We'll let China have the future. We'll let Germany have the future. We'll let India have the future. But we own the past, says Chris Wright. We own the energy past, and we're going to protect it against any innovation in America that would in any way inhibit the ability of the past to continue to reap profits from America. And by the way, one of the things which he killed is my offshore wind manufacturing bill, which was going to give incentives to companies in the United States to manufacture the offshore wind technologies to be deployed. Killed that. That was going to keep the jobs here. That was going to incentivize American companies to innovate in the manufacture of offshore wind technologies. Wants to kill that because he wants to kill the offshore wind industry. Why does he want to kill the offshore wind industry? What's Chris Wright's thinking? Here's what he's thinking. Here's what Donald Trump is thinking. The more that you deploy offshore wind is the less natural gas you need to generate electricity. And since that's where he comes from, That's the past, so he has to protect the past. He's a radical, Chris Wright. Just an absolutely rabid radical looking in a rearview mirror at the past. And anything that would interfere with that, including massive deployment of offshore wind, must be killed. So that's what he's recommended here in the House Ways and Means and the House Energy and Commerce Committee bill. But that's not all. That's not all that Chris Wright is engaging in, the Republicans engaging in, Donald Trump is engaging in. They're also cutting billions in historic investments from the Inflation Reduction Act, in environmental justice, in air pollution reduction programs. Even at schools, even where kids are exposed to the pollution, they're removing any of the protections against kids breathing in this dangerous asthma-inducing air that's been polluted by oil and gas and coal. And that includes $20 billion in the Climate Bank, the Green Bank, which Chris Van Hollen and I secured in the Inflation Reduction Act. Also, it's called the Inflation Reduction Act because Joe Manchin, who voted for it, did not want it to be called the biggest climate bill, the biggest clean energy bill in the history of the world. Okay? But that's what it is. It's the biggest clean energy bill in history. And what McKinsey has analyzed is that the $20 billion Green Bank will unleash $250 billion worth of private sector investment in clean energy technologies. Well, if you're Chris Wright, you have to kill that. You can't allow for a massive revolution in clean energy to come out of the Green Energy Bank. So Chris Wright, Mr. Radical, reactionary, look at the world in a rearview mirror, Secretary of Energy, he's killed that too, at Donald Trump's behest, by the way. Donald Trump's behest. Again, he looks like a very nice man. But that's not what the job of the Secretary of Energy requires. It requires vision. It requires looking ahead, leading the way, having America be competitive with the Chinese in new technology. Okay, we're in a big battle with China over trade. Well, we won't have anything to send to them in clean energy. It's going to be a one-way street. One-way street coming from them to us after they finish off our clean energy industry, which is what they're trying to do. In the same way, they have massive cuts to the National Institutes of Health. Research in Alzheimer's and cancer and diabetes and other diseases is going to finish off our ability to be competitive in biotech. This is the next step. Let's finish off the clean energy industry as well. Unfortunately, the investments in the clean energy technologies would have created jobs by the millions. It would have strengthened our energy independence because all of that energy, by definition, is produced here in the United States of America. It's our sun. It's our wind. It would be our batteries that we could store that electricity with. We don't need the Chinese. We don't need anybody else. We could just do it right here. What could be more conducive to being able to have a headline of energy independence than capturing all of these God-given gifts which we have in our country? Destroyed across the board, and they're going to be killing the funding that would save consumers money at the pump by increasing the fuel economy standards of the vehicles which we drive in our country. The one thing the oil industry hates, I just talked about the natural gas industry, they hate wind and solar and batteries, generating new electricity. What does the oil industry hate? Well, the oil industry hates vehicles that are twice as energy efficient as old vehicles. Instead of 27 miles a gallon, they get 54 miles a gallon. Instead of 54 miles a gallon, they get 108 miles a gallon. Or if it's plug-in all-electric or plug-in hybrid, it's pretty much an infinity sign that's next to how efficient that vehicle is and how little oil they need. And that's a Death Star for the oil industry. So they've got to kill the fuel economy standards that make all of the vehicles which we drive more efficient because it's just going to protect the past, which is what Donald Trump's all about. There's some kind of nostalgia he has for 1958. Okay? He wants to go back in time. But America can't afford to be looking in the rearview mirror because our European, our Asian, our South American competitors, they're coming for us. We're only 5% of the world's population. And up until the Trump administration, what has given us our edge is innovation. It's investment in research. It's looking ahead, and it's trying to lead the way, and that's where young people in our country want to go. But instead of the dawn of a clean energy future, Republicans are sunsetting incentives that would spur clean domestic manufacturing for industries inside of the United States. And by the way, let me say it again, just the very brief period of time, about 3 years since the passage of the biggest climate bill in history, we've created 400,000 new jobs in the clean energy sector in the United States and already unleashed $400 billion worth of energy investment. So they are committed, the Republicans, and they're proud of it, led by Chris Wright, an oil and gas man, to be the world's laggard, not leader, to just fall behind everybody in the clean energy sector. That's what their plan is, to destroy everything that has been unleashed in our nation. And we not only won't be the leader in the global economy or the clean energy economy, we're just going to cede the jobs. We're going to cede the progress to our economic rivals led by the Chinese. And who is making this worse? Again, it's Energy Secretary Chris Wright, the fracker-in-chief. He's a fracker. He really believes in fracking for oil, fracking for gas. A man who just last week told the Congress that his agency had paid all its bills, canceled no clean energy grants, laid off barely a handful of staff, and wasn't freezing funding. Every one of those statements is false. Now he's doubling down with a thoughtless regulatory bonfire. And this deregulatory blitz eliminates standards for everyday appliances in our homes: microwaves, refrigerators, dishwashers, washing machines. All the regulations say is make all those devices more energy efficient so you don't have to burn coal in order to have the washing machine work, in order to have the refrigerator work. We're not asking for anyone to put a mission to Mars in place. We're not asking for anyone to be a rocket scientist. We're asking for people to make dishwashers more efficient, washing machines more efficient. And you know what Chris Wright says? Impossible. Impossible. We can't figure out how to do that. So we're just going to stop all progress that we're making in ensuring that all these electricity-consuming appliances are more efficient. And the less efficient they are is the bigger the electricity bill for every single American. That's their goal. And what happens when you have to consume more electricity? You got to pay the natural gas industry for all the extra electricity, which is coming into your home. That's the plan. Oil industry wants automobiles, trucks to be less efficient. The natural gas industry wants all appliances, homes, everything less efficient, and not to use wind and solar and battery storage technology. Okay? They each have two simple business plans, which Chris Wright, who is one of the most radical people who has ever had a position in the American government, wants to put in place, the fracker-in-chief. I wrote the law. I'm the author of the law that the Department of Energy uses to set the standards for dishwashers, for refrigeration in our country. I put that law on the books in 1987. And so far, it has saved somewhere around the need for about 200 coal-burning plants to ever have been built in the first place, because those devices never needed the electricity that otherwise would have been needed if there was less efficiency. And the bill itself, according to experts, has now saved $2 trillion in energy bills since 1987. Can I say that again? I'm very proud of this. My bill has helped to save $2 trillion that consumers otherwise would have had to have paid in their electricity bills to have inefficient refrigeration, inefficient dishwashers in their house, inefficient air conditioning in their house. $2 trillion has been saved. And it has also prevented 3 billion metric tons of greenhouse gas emissions from going up. That's a lot of greenhouse gases that never went up because we made those appliances so much more energy efficient. And it then saved consumers $500 a year because they never had to pay those electricity bills. So you would think the Secretary of Energy would say, let's keep moving forward. Let's keep making all of these devices more and more efficient. But no, he works in natural gas. He works in oil, so his goal is to roll it all back because it harms the business model of the natural gas industry or the oil industry. So here's the thing. I personally believe in Darwinian paranoia-inducing competition. That's what I believe. I'm a capitalist. Let's just have everybody be able to do everything. That's not the socialistic attitude that Chris Wright has. He wants to use socialism to protect the oil and gas industry from real competition. Is he going to take the tax breaks for the oil and gas industry off the books? Oh, no, he's not taking those tax breaks off the books. Is he going to take off favorable regulatory protections for the oil and gas industry? He's not going to do that. No. This is all the old boys network, the billionaire boys club network in the energy industry to thwart the movement that young people want to a future of clean energy, of the solar and wind, all-electric vehicle future for our country. So Chris Wright and Trump want to throw everything out because nothing says freedom more than smog and higher utility bills. They want us to have the freedom to have more smog. They want us to have the freedom to have more asthmas. They want us as a nation to have the freedom to pay higher utility bills for natural gas generated electricity. That's his idea of freedom, Chris Wright. And again, it just goes back to the bottom line of those companies that he used to run before he just became Secretary of Energy. Now, I don't mind him saying that he wants to have a new future for our country, but you can't say it simultaneously when you're killing the future. You're killing it, Chris Wright. You are the worst example of what the Trump administration is bringing to Washington. You are going to make us more dependent on fossil fuels. Consumers will have to pay higher prices. It's going to lead to higher levels of disease in our nation. And we're going to see more storms like Hurricane Milton and Helene last year that caused $300 billion worth of damage. We're going to see more fires like that which we saw in LA, which caused $140 billion worth of damage. Those are just 3 storms that caused $440 billion worth of damage, those 3 storms alone. So, you just say, hey, Chris, hey, Mr. Secretary, what's your answer to that? And you know what his answer is? More fossil fuels. Warm up the planet even more. Turn it up a few more degrees. The temperature's too low. Let's put the temperature up higher. And what are young people saying? They're saying, turn the thermostat down. This planet's getting too warm. Just turn it down. Okay? And that's renewables. That's the way in which you do it. So we've seen Chris Wright make outlandishly false claims before. Back in March, Chris Wright took the stage in front of oil and gas executives and delivered what might go down as the most egregious fossil-fueled fiction ever spoken at a podium. And that's saying a lot. It was part sermon, part stand-up, and part 100% spin. Chris Wright said, and I quote, "The previous administration's policy was focused myopically on climate change with people as simply collateral damage." That's his statement. The Inflation Reduction Act, on the other hand, did create 400,000 clean energy jobs. It unleashed $400 billion worth of investments. That's not collateral damage. That's a climate comeback. That's a middle-class revival in our country. That's 400,000 middle-class jobs in our nation that the Inflation Reduction Act, also known as the biggest climate bill in history, has produced. And they're committed to stopping it. And that's what Republicans are willing to tank with their latest proposal. So now I'm going to give you the killer stat. This is why they have to kill it. Last year in the United States, 94% of all new electrical generation capacity installed was wind and solar and batteries. So the natural gas industry is saying, that can't happen. You mean we were left with 6%? Yeah, that's right. This thing is moving. Wind, solar, and battery storage for electrical generation in our country. And if you do it every year for the next 10 years or the next 25 years, then the natural gas industry just won't be able to compete in the marketplace. So Adam Smith is spinning in his grave looking at what Chris Wright is doing today, tampering with the free market, tampering with incentives for the competition to oil and gas who have received tax breaks for 100 years. Adam Smith's spinning in his grave, thinking how capitalism is being completely distorted. Although he wrote a whole chapter in Wealth of Nations, and the chapter was just about how much he hated monopolies, how much he hated oligopolies, who are anathema when it comes to competition, when it comes to capitalism. He really wanted Darwinian, paranoia-inducing competition, Adam Smith. That's not what Chris Wright wants. That's not what Donald Trump wants. Donald Trump wants to be able to put his thumb on the scale for the oil and gas industry, for the coal industry, just to destroy the future competition. And meanwhile, the Trump administration has already cost America more than 50,000 clean energy jobs and over $8 billion in private sector clean energy projects. If anything is collateral damage, it's our economy under Donald Trump and the Chris Wright chaos agenda in the marketplace for the clean energy industry. Here's what Chris Wright also said. He also said, quote, "Natural gas has been the fastest growing source of energy over the last 15 years. Wind and solar," he said, "supply roughly 3% of global primary energy." Chris Wright must have brought a calculator from 2005 because those numbers are just completely wrong. In reality, wind and solar are the fastest growing electricity sources in history. In 2024, as I've already said, they made up over 90% of all new electrical generation in the United States. And listen to this. This is scary for the oil and gas industry. 96% of all new electrical generation installed worldwide last year was wind and solar and battery. 96% globally wind, solar. So he's saying, oh, it's just such a small part. No, it's not. And it's going to grow and grow and grow and grow. And that's what is putting the fear into the hearts of the oil and gas industry. They've got to stop it. And so they've ordered the House Republicans to kill it in the Ways and Means Committee, kill it in the Energy and Commerce Committee, and then they want to send it over here so that Republicans can rubber stamp this decision to kill the future. And I guess that's inaccurate. It's not the future. It's right now. It's over 90% of the United States and 96% globally last year, the installation of new electrical generation capacity. And so they're desperate, totally desperate. They wish they had killed the Affordable Care Act like 10 years ago because now they don't have the nerve to try to kill the Affordable Care Act because now people already are benefiting from those changes. So they're trying to kill this, kill it right now, kill it before it gets more momentum and destroys the business model of 100 years of the oil, gas, and coal industry. And by the way, in the United States alone, we added 50 new megawatts of new solar in 2024. Think of it like this. In 2009, we only had 2,000 megawatts of solar from the beginning of time until 2009. Last year, 50,000 new megawatts of solar was installed in our country. And if there was 50,000 next year, and the year after, and the year after, and when 10 years is done, you have 500,000 new megawatts of solar. So the oil and gas industry, listening to Donald Trump, who said, if you raise $1 billion for me, he said this last April, in the middle of his campaign, I will kill the clean energy revolution. I will kill it. So this is just pay to play. Here's an industry that's growing, creating new jobs, hand over fist, just growing at a faster rate than the economy itself, growing way faster than the economy itself. And what we now see are the fossil fuel apologists saying that new solar just doesn't work, when in fact, new solar is now cheaper than simply operating an existing coal plant. Offshore wind, half the cost of building a new gas plant. That's what offshore wind amounts to. Half the price. They have to kill it. It's too efficient. It's too clean. It doesn't pollute. Doesn't cause asthmas. They've got to kill it now, says Chris Wright, says the oil and gas industry. Chris Wright also said, quote, wind has been singled out because it's had a singularly poor record of driving up prices and increasing citizen outrage. Well, that's just not true. In fact, the states with the most wind and solar, Iowa, South Dakota, Texas, they also have lower electricity rates than other parts of the country. Clean energy isn't just clean, it is cheap. If Republicans really cared about communities, they would stop exporting our liquefied natural gas, which drives up prices at home. So let's stop these fossil fuel companies from gouging families with price spikes and pretending that pollution is patriotism. The administration has made its trade-off clear, your future for their profit. That's Trump's art of the deal. They get to be rich, and young people don't have a future when it comes to clean energy or protecting against climate change. That's the art of the deal. It's an intergenerational deal. The older generation gets all the money, and the next generations take all the risk. That's his deal. And he's expecting everyone to respond like a candidate on The Apprentice. Well, they're not going to. Young people are going to rise up. The word's going to get out. This is very dangerous, what he is doing. The Trump administration, said Chris Wright, will end the Biden administration's irrational, quasi-religious policies on climate change that imposed endless sacrifices on our citizens. That's Chris Wright. This is kind of radical, irrational, non-fact-based, but ultimately Trumpian at its soul policies that Chris Wright has to defend. Now, you would hope that he knows better, but I think it's different. I think that what Chris Wright has is a remarkable ability to harness voluminous amounts of information to defend a knowingly erroneous premise. And that erroneous premise is that wind and solar and batteries aren't working right now. So he has to just tell lies about it, plain and simple. Lie, lie, lie. And I get it. This is a religious war, pitting economic stimulus policies that drove investment in the free market against their religion of pure Trumpism, pitting corporate profits against breathable air, drinkable water, and a habitable planet. Do you place their aims at the foot of an effigy of Harold Hamm? Well, Republicans do. He's the biggest natural gas guy in the country, and he said he would raise the money for Donald Trump. Here's the real gospel. Clean energy is not polarizing, it's popular in the polls. Not only do people not like it, 70% of registered voters support the biggest climate bill in history. with over 70% of registered voters saying the U.S. needs to use more renewable energy than it does today. That's not religion. That is stimulus in solar panels. And again, it's the public saying, move to the future, move away from oil and gas. If we want to talk about sacrifice, it's our communities who are sacrificing their lungs to pollution, their homes to floods, their paychecks to fossil fuel price spikes, all for the religion of climate denialism. I think all these guys, they must have got their climate degree from Trump University. I think Chris Wright and all of them inside of his administration, because it's just the opposite of what is happening out there. The planet is dangerously warming. We've got a response that is massively capturing a private sector investment all across our country to deploy the renewable energy resources that reduces greenhouse gases. And yet, again, I'm going to come back to Chris Wright. He claims the previous administration's climate policies have been impoverishing to our citizens, economically destructive to our businesses, and politically polarizing. The cure, this is Chris Wright, was far more destructive than the disease. There are no winners in that world except for politicians in rapidly growing interest groups. Is he talking about the 450,000 asthma deaths every year worldwide? Let me say that again. Is he talking about the 450,000 people who die from asthma every year globally? Or the billions in extreme weather and climate change-related damage every year? That disease sounds pretty damaging. Isn't the cure? Well, regulations that this administration is going to try to roll back right now. They're going to try to roll back the protections that are now in place to reduce dramatically the number of people who die from asthmas. And the rest of the world, of course, is also deploying the cure, the renewable energy technologies. Is there too little mercury up in the air? Is there too few air toxics up in the air right now? That Chris Wright says we need more of them? We need more of them in the lungs of young people, that we need more of them in the lungs of young mothers, pregnant women across our country and across the planet? I don't hear anyone calling for more mercury, more toxics in the air. And if the regulations stayed in place, it would save 11,000 deaths every year. And speaking of interest groups, let us not pretend this administration is for the people. The only group Trump has ever prioritized is the fossil fuel elite. And so now we come back to Chris Wright again, who is bringing that same attitude towards governing. And he just doesn't get the attention he deserves for the malevolent way in which he is trying to destroy the clean energy future of our country. Today's energy regulatory rollback today is a kamikaze mission against clean energy, against efficiency, against accountability, and Republicans are more than happy to sign our planet's death sentence. That's what they're doing. That's what their plan is this year on the floor of the Senate. And in the rollback of all the regulations that have been promulgated over the years at the Department of Energy and the Environmental Protection Agency, a death sentence for the planet. We're talking about rescinding energy and water conservation standards for dozens of products that most Americans have in their homes. Microwaves, faucets that save billions of dollars and billions of gallons of water annually. And what are we going to get instead? What's Chris Wright promising? What's Donald Trump promising us? A rule book written by and for fossil fuel companies. That's what we're going to have. Fossil fuel profiteers. No science, no data, just the same old special interests pushing the same old lies. So when Chris Wright and Republicans say they want to cut red tape, what he really means is cut clean air, cut consumer savings, cut climate future, cut clean water, cut safe lands. Cut, cut, cut. So let's call this what it is, the Trump deregulation doctrine. If it saves money, repeal it. If it protects public health, gut it. If it curbs emissions, cancel it. And if it benefits the American people, sabotage it. This isn't a regulatory review. It's a regulatory revenge tour. And it's not just about energy efficiency. It's about justice, because it's frontline communities, the poorest communities, black and brown communities, poor communities, already overburdened by asthma, heat, energy insecurity, who are going to pay a disproportionate price because of what Trump is doing, because of what Chris Wright is doing. It's almost unconscionable what Chris Wright is attempting to perpetrate upon the poorest, the most vulnerable in our society, but he's doing it. All because they're not rich enough, the oil barons, the natural gas barons, the coal barons. They're not rich enough. We have to have more people die. We have to have more people get sick. Madam America, Mr. America, the American people deserve better than this. They deserve an energy secretary who believes in science, who tells the truth, who doesn't measure progress in barrels sold or rules repealed. We should be investing in the future, not dismantling the future. We should be building cleaner, safer, and more affordable systems, not resurrecting pollution in the name of profit. So to Chris Wright and Donald Trump, I say, we will fight you in the courts. We will fight you in the states. We will fight you on the floor of this chamber, because every rule you tear down, we are going to rebuild stronger. Every lie you tell, we are going to counter with the truth. And every time you try to sell out the American people to pad a corporate balance sheet so that the rich become even richer, we will be back there to push against you, to protect the American public, to attempt to protect those who are most vulnerable in our society. So you're not going to back down, we're not going to back down. This is a fight for the future. This is a fight for the planet. They're trying to write the death certificate of the planet right now, and we're not going to let them get away with it. They're in for an historic resistance coming up from the streets of our country, because this is too important just to be another source of revenue for the tax breaks for the already too rich in our society. And I'll just finish with this. The three richest guys in America who sat behind Donald Trump at the inauguration, they control more wealth than the bottom 50% of our population combined. Do they really need more? Do oil and gas barons really need more? Does it have to come at the expense of the future of all the young people in our country? Does it have to come at the expense of the health of everyone in our nation? Aren't we better than this? Aren't we really the innovation country? So that would be my message. You're in for a fight. It's a fight for the future against those who want to pull us back towards a past which ultimately has created the issues, the problems, the risks that we're confronted with today. So with that, Mr. President, I yield back, and I thank you for your courtesy.